Wait, what did you just say? Tom's voice trembled as he stepped closer to the doctor's station. The hallway outside Washington General Hospital smelled of antiseptic and rain. Nurses moved quickly between rooms, their shoes squeaking against polished floors. But Tom heard only one thing, the doctor's hushed words. "She's stable," the doctor said. "Her mother's estate is being processed. The daughter in room 302 is inheriting a $1 trillion empire." Tom froze. Trillion. The number echoed in his mind like a heartbeat. He turned toward the patient rooms. Room 302, Jessica Parker. His wife's best friend. The glamorous one. The one who wore designer clothes, drove a Lexus, and always talked about her connections. And just next door, room 303, his wife's mother, Ellen. The woman with thrift store sweaters and a leaky roof. The one he'd always thought was a financial burden. His pulse quickened. Tom stepped back slowly, the fluorescent lights flickering over his pale face. In that single moment, greed eclipsed reason. He imagined private jets, oceanside mansions, the kind of life he thought he deserved but had never earned. He looked at room 302 again, the number gleaming in chrome, and then he made the choice that would destroy everything. 2 hours later, he stood in the hospital parking lot, soaked in rain, texting his wife. "Tom, we need to talk. I think we've grown apart. Rachel." "What? You're leaving me now?" "My mom's in the hospital, Tom." He hesitated, his fingers shaking, then hit send anyway. When Rachel received the text, she was sitting by her mother's bedside in room 303. Ellen's breathing was slow but steady, the sound of a woman fighting her last battle with grace. Rachel looked at her husband's message, disbelief spreading across her face. "What?" she whispered. Her mother stirred. "Sweetheart, what's wrong?" "Nothing, Mama. Just rest." But Rachel's hands trembled. She didn't know that just one wall away, in room 302, Jessica Parker was visiting her own mother, the one whose last name happened to be the same as the billionaire CEO of Parker Tech Industries. And Tom, standing outside with his head full of dollar signs, didn't know that Jessica's mother wasn't the billionaire's wife at all. She was the housekeeper. That night, Tom filed for divorce. He rehearsed his speech, words about feeling trapped, needing space, not being in love anymore. But the truth was uglier. He was chasing what he thought was money. Rachel cried through the entire conversation. "Tom, please," she said through tears. "Can't this wait? My mom needs me." But Tom's eyes were cold. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I just can't do this anymore." He left without another word. Behind him, Rachel collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing, while Ellen, weak, pale, but still sharper than she looked, whispered, "Let him go, baby. Some people only see what glitters. They never recognize gold until it's gone." The next morning, Ellen Richardson took her final breath. Rachel held her mother's hand as the heart monitor flattened into silence. Grief swallowed her whole. She didn't know that Ellen's lawyer somewhere across D.C. had already received a sealed envelope marked "Private Open Upon Death." It was addressed to Rachel. Tom, meanwhile, showed up at Jessica's apartment 2 days later. She opened the door in disbelief. "Tom? What are you doing here?" He smiled his most charming smile. "I just needed to talk. I've been thinking, maybe I made a mistake. Maybe I was with the wrong person." Jessica frowned. "You mean Rachel?" "Tom, she's your wife?" "Was," he corrected, smirking. "We finalized things. It's complicated, but I just realized we've always had a connection, you know." Jessica hesitated. "Tom, my mom's in the hospital. This isn't—" He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know. I heard about the inheritance." Her brow furrowed. "Inheritance?" He grinned. "You don't have to play coy with me. Room 302, right? The doctor said your mom's estate is in the trillions. I get it, you're trying to keep it quiet." Jessica blinked. "Trillions? What are you talking about?" "My mom's worked as a maid for the Parker family her whole life." Tom's face drained of color. "Wait, what?" Jessica stared at him, confused and suddenly disgusted. "You divorced Rachel over this, didn't you?" He opened his mouth to speak, but no sound came out. Jessica slammed the door in his face. And in that moment, Tom realized the mistake that would haunt him forever. The rain had stopped by morning, but the air in Washington, D.C. was still heavy. The kind that made everything feel suspended, like the world was holding its breath. Rachel sat in the corner office of Howard and Klein Law, staring at a folder with her mother's name embossed in gold letters. Ellen Richardson. The lawyer, a soft-spoken man with kind eyes and gray at his temples, closed the blinds and sat across from her. "Mrs. Richardson," he said gently, "your mother left very specific instructions. She wanted everything handled privately. No public announcement. No media." Rachel nodded, still red-eyed from crying. "Of course. That's how she was. Quiet." The lawyer smiled faintly. "Quiet. Yes. But deliberate." He slid the folder toward her. "What I'm about to tell you may feel overwhelming. But please remember, your mother wanted you to have this." Rachel frowned, confused. "Have what?" He opened the folder. Inside were pages of documents, trust deeds, stock certificates, property titles. Each one bore the same name: Ellen M. Richardson Holdings, LLC. Rachel blinked. "What is this?" The lawyer leaned forward. "Your mother wasn't just a retired accountant, Mrs. Richardson. She was one of the principal founders and silent partners in Ardent Global Tech, now valued at over $3 trillion. Rachel froze. "What?" He nodded. "Your mother kept her ownership private to protect you. She never told anyone. She lived modestly so you'd grow up with empathy and integrity. Everything she had, every share, every account, is now yours." Rachel stared down at the papers, unable to process what she was seeing. Her mother? The woman who'd shopped with coupons and patched up her own shoes? A trillionaire? The lawyer continued, his tone reverent. "She also left a letter. She asked that I read it to you personally." He unfolded a single page of handwritten stationery. "My dearest Rachel, if you're hearing this, it means my time has come. I didn't want to leave you with wealth you weren't ready for. I wanted to leave you with strength. I lived humbly so you could learn compassion before comfort, gratitude before luxury. Now that lesson is complete. Be wise with this inheritance. Never flaunt it, never let greed in your home, and never chase those who walk away. The people meant for you will never leave for gold. With love, Mama." By the time the lawyer finished, Rachel's tears had returned, not from grief this time, but from awe. I don't even know what to say," she whispered. "Just promise me," the lawyer said quietly, "that you'll protect yourself. The moment the transfer is finalized, people will come knocking, especially those who once underestimated you." Rachel thought of Tom. Her jaw clenched. That afternoon, the news hit the financial world like a shockwave. Trillionaire tech founder Ellen Richardson passes away, leaving full control of Ardent Global to her daughter. It was everywhere: Bloomberg, CNN, even trending on X. And somewhere across the city, Tom sat in a bar, scrolling on his phone, his drink untouched. When he saw the headline, the color drained from his face. He reread the name over and over: Ellen Richardson. The mother in room 303. Rachel's mother, not Jessica's. His stomach turned to ice. He whispered under his breath, "Oh my God, what have I done?" The bartender glanced at him. "You okay, buddy?" Tom didn't answer. He just sat there, his pulse hammering in his ears, as the TV behind the counter played footage of Rachel stepping out of a black car, reporters swarming around her. "Mrs. Richardson, how does it feel inheriting your mother's empire? What are your plans for Ardent Global?" Rachel didn't say a word. She just smiled politely and kept walking. Tom gripped his glass so hard it cracked. That night, he showed up at Rachel's old apartment. She opened the door slowly, wearing simple jeans and a cream sweater, her face calm, almost serene. "Tom," she said flatly, "what are you doing here?" He forced a laugh. "Come on, Rach. Don't be like that. We've been through so much. I made a mistake, okay? I wasn't thinking straight." "No," she interrupted softly. "You were thinking perfectly straight. You just thought I was poor." Tom swallowed. "That's not fair." "Fair?" Rachel stepped forward. "You left me when my mother was dying. You filed papers while I was holding her hand in a hospital bed. And you called that fair? He tried again, desperate now. Rachel, listen. I love you. I always have. I got confused. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. But it was sad, distant. No, Tom. You got greedy. She started to close the door, but paused. You know what's funny? My mom always told me that money doesn't change people. It just shows who they really are. The door clicked shut. Tom stood there in the hallway, staring at the wood grain, realizing the full weight of what he'd lost, not just wealth, but dignity. Before we go further, if you've ever been underestimated, if someone walked out when you had nothing and tried to return when you rose again, remember this moment. Because sometimes the richest revenge isn't payback, it's peace. 3 days later, Washington, D.C., buzzed with whispers of Rachel Richardson, the mystery heiress, who had quietly inherited one of the largest private tech fortunes in the world. Her mother's legacy, once invisible, now illuminated every headline. Hidden trillionaire leaves empire to only daughter. The most powerful woman in Washington you've never heard of. But Rachel didn't rush to claim the spotlight. She spent those days in her late mother's modest home, sitting at the kitchen table where they'd once shared coffee and crossword puzzles. The curtains fluttered in the afternoon breeze, sunlight landing softly on the stacks of legal papers she was still trying to understand. For the first time since her mother's passing, she felt something new. Not grief. Not anger. Control. Across the city, Tom was unraveling. He hadn't slept properly in days. His job at the marketing firm was hanging by a thread. He'd missed 2 client meetings and arrived late to another. His eyes bloodshot, his shirt wrinkled. But worse than exhaustion was the humiliation. Every time he turned on a TV or scrolled through his phone, there she was, Rachel, poised and calm, standing beside world leaders, entrepreneurs, and philanthropists. A photo of her at a charity gala flashed across his feed. The caption read, Rachel Richardson pledges $200 million to fund education for underprivileged girls. He muttered under his breath, "That's my wife." Then the realization stabbed him again. No, she wasn't. He'd made sure of that. Jessica, the best friend he'd once imagined would elevate his life, wasn't answering his calls anymore. After that night in the hospital, after realizing his motive, she'd blocked his number and disappeared. Tom sat alone in his 1-bedroom apartment, surrounded by takeout boxes and overdue bills, staring at the divorce papers he'd filed in haste. He whispered to himself, I can fix this. She'll understand. She has to. But deep down, he knew she never would. Rachel's phone buzzed that evening. Her lawyer, Mr. Klein, was on the line. Mrs. Richardson, I wanted to update you. The press is requesting interviews. Every outlet wants your story. I've already turned down Forbes and CNBC, but it might be time to make a statement. Rachel hesitated. What kind of statement? Something simple. Your mother's legacy, your plans moving forward. Keep it dignified, grounded. That's what people are responding to, the contrast between who you were and who you are now. Rachel smiled faintly. You mean who I've always been? The lawyer chuckled softly. Exactly. She agreed to appear at a charity event that weekend, a formal dinner at the National Museum of American History, attended by senators, CEOs, and the city's elite. It was her first public event as a trillionaire. But what Rachel didn't know not yet was that Tom would be there too. Saturday night arrived. Rachel stepped out of the black Lincoln Town car wearing a simple black gown and her mother's pearl earrings. The cameras flashed, but she didn't flinch. Every reporter shouted her name, but she moved through the chaos with quiet confidence. Inside the grand hall, chandeliers sparkled over hundreds of guests. The air was thick with perfume, champagne, and curiosity. Is that her? Someone whispered. That's the daughter, the one from nowhere. Rachel smiled politely at the murmurs. Her table was near the stage, surrounded by business leaders eager to shake her hand. And in the back of the room, unnoticed, Tom stood by the bar, his suit ill-fitted, his face pale. He'd used an old business contact to get an invite. He'd told himself he just wanted closure. But as soon as he saw her radiant, composed, untouchable, his heart twisted. He waited until the speeches ended. Then, as guests began mingling, he made his move. "Rachel," he said softly, stepping into her path. She froze. The smile faded from her face, replaced by that same calm distance she'd worn at her mother's funeral. "Tom, you look—" He swallowed hard. "You look amazing." "Thank you." He hesitated. "Can we talk? Just for a minute, please." Rachel glanced around, then nodded slightly. "Fine. A minute." They stepped into a quiet hallway, lined with portraits of American innovators. The sound of music and laughter drifted faintly from the main hall. Tom shoved his hands in his pockets, unable to meet her eyes. "I know you don't owe me anything, and I know I messed up, but I need you to know I didn't leave, because I stopped loving you." Rachel tilted her head, studying him. "Then why did you leave?" Tom's throat worked as he searched for words. I thought I saw something that could give us a better life. I thought I was chasing opportunity." Her voice was calm but razor sharp. "No, Tom. You were chasing someone else's mother's money." He flinched. "I know how it looks." "It looks exactly how it was," she said, stepping closer. "You walked out when I was at my lowest, and you did it for greed. There's nothing left to fix." He reached out. "Rachel, please, I made a mistake." She took a step back. "No, you made a choice." For a long moment, the silence between them felt heavier than the marble walls around them. Rachel finally spoke, her tone soft but final. "You know, when my mom died, I thought I lost everything, but she gave me something even bigger than money. She gave me clarity. You helped with that, too." He blinked, confused. "What do you mean?" She smiled faintly. "You showed me who deserves to stand beside me and who doesn't." Then she turned, walking away without another word. Tom stood there, staring at her retreating figure, the click of her heels echoing like a verdict. If you've ever been betrayed by someone who only saw your worth when they thought it came with wealth, remember Rachel. Because sometimes, grace is the loudest form of revenge. The following week, Washington, D.C. was still buzzing about Rachel Richardson. Every business journal, every podcast, every headline seemed to repeat her name. The humble trillionaire, the mystery heir, the woman who inherited an empire but carried herself like a teacher. But Rachel didn't care about fame. She was focused on purpose. She spent her mornings in the offices of Ardent Global Tech, learning everything about the company her mother had secretly co-founded. It wasn't just a tech conglomerate. It was an ecosystem, green energy startups, education foundations, and a medical AI division her mother had personally funded before her passing. In the boardroom, men twice her age leaned in when she spoke. Her calm voice carried the same quiet conviction her mother had once wielded, the kind that commanded attention without demanding it. At night, she returned home to the same small townhouse she'd shared with her mother. She refused to move into the penthouse her advisors offered. She still cooked her own meals, washed her own dishes, and listened to the same gospel records Ellen used to play while making breakfast. Every evening she'd whisper, "I hope I'm doing it right, Mama." Meanwhile, Tom was slipping further into chaos. His company had demoted him after a series of missed deadlines. His credit cards were maxed out, and the woman he'd left everything for, Jessica, wasn't answering his calls. He saw her once across the street in Georgetown, laughing with a man in a gray suit. The man opened the car door for her, a black Mercedes with tinted windows. Tom stood on the corner, rain pelting his jacket, watching as they drove off. He whispered, "You've got to be kidding me." That night, he stumbled back into his apartment, the one bedroom that smelled like takeout and regret. He poured himself a drink, stared at the TV, and the broadcast hit him like a punch to the chest. Breaking news. Rachel Richardson's first public initiative, the Ellen Project, pledges $500 million to fund inner-city education programs across the United States. The camera showed Rachel standing on a stage, wearing her mother's pearls again, surrounded by children holding laptops and school books. "My mother believed in giving people a chance," she said. "So that's what I'm going to do. This is her dream, not mine. I'm just finishing what she started." The audience erupted in applause. Tom dropped the remote, his glass shattering against the floor. He pressed his palms against his face, tears mixing with the whiskey. He couldn't decide which hurt worse, losing her, or realizing that she was becoming everything he never believed she could be. 2 days later, a sleek black town car pulled up to the same apartment building Rachel used to call home. Her lawyer, Mr. Klein, stepped out holding a thick folder. "Mrs. Richardson," he said when she greeted him at the door, "we need to discuss a few things. There's interest from investors who want you to take the company public, and several foundations are requesting partnership with the Ellen Project." Rachel motioned for him to sit. "I appreciate it, but I'm not rushing into anything. My mother's legacy isn't a business strategy. It's a promise." He nodded, impressed. "You really are her daughter." She smiled faintly. "That's the best compliment anyone could give me." He hesitated, then said, "You should know. Your ex-husband reached out to our office." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes hardened. "And what did he want?" "He asked if he could speak with you privately. He said he wanted to apologize in person." Rachel leaned back, thinking, "I'm not interested in apologies, Mr. Klein. Not from him." "I thought you'd say that," he said with a small smile. "I told him we'd pass along his message, but I didn't tell him where you live." "Good," she said simply. That night, Rachel visited her mother's grave for the first time since the inheritance went public. The cemetery was quiet, the air cool, the city lights glowing faintly in the distance. She placed a bouquet of lilies on the headstone and knelt down. "I did it, Mama," she whispered. "They all know now, but I'm not going to let it change me. I promise." The wind rustled through the trees, a soft sound like a sigh. She smiled through her tears. "You were right, you know." The storm came and I stood. As she walked back to her car, she didn't notice the man sitting in a beat-up sedan across the street. Tom watched her, tears welling in his eyes. He'd been coming there for days, parking just to see her from afar. When he saw her kneel at her mother's grave, something inside him broke completely. He whispered, "You were always gold, Rachel. I was just too blind to see it. If you've ever realized too late who truly mattered, take this as your reminder. Don't wait for regret to open your eyes. Love the people who stay when the world gives you nothing." 3 nights later, the sky over D.C. was the color of steel, thick clouds pressing low, streetlights shimmering through a light drizzle. Rachel sat at her desk, surrounded by paperwork for the Ellen Project. She was finalizing logistics for a new program, scholarships for underprivileged single mothers, when the doorbell rang. Her brow furrowed. She wasn't expecting anyone. She stood, crossed the small living room, and opened the door. Tom. He looked nothing like the man she'd once married. His suit was wrinkled, his hair unkempt, his eyes hollow, a man half drowned in guilt and whiskey. "Rachel," he said softly. Her first instinct was to shut the door, but something stopped her. Maybe curiosity, maybe pity, maybe just closure. She sighed. "What do you want, Tom?" He hesitated, his voice trembling. 5 minutes. Please. Just 5 minutes." Rachel studied him, the slump in his shoulders, the desperation in his tone, and finally nodded once. 5 minutes. Then you leave." He stepped inside, glancing around the modest room. "You didn't move? I thought you'd be in some penthouse now." She crossed her arms. "Not everyone measures life by square footage." He looked down. "Right. 1. Then his words spilled out, rushed and broken. "I know you don't owe me forgiveness, Rachel. I wouldn't forgive me either. But I need you to understand why I left. I was scared. You were struggling. Your mom was sick, and I couldn't handle it. Then I heard that doctor. I thought—" He stopped, choking on shame. "I thought Jessica's mom was the one with money. I thought maybe if I—" She cut in sharply. "If you traded up?" He flinched. "Yeah, I guess that's what I thought. And when I realized it was your mom, when I saw your face on the news—" His voice cracked. "Rachel, I felt like my soul had been ripped out." She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. "I lost everything," he continued, tears gathering in his eyes. "My job, my savings, my friends, even Jessica. She left as soon as she realized I was broke. I deserve it, I know. but I can't sleep knowing what I did to you. I came here to say I'm sorry. Not for the money, not because of who you are now, but because I finally see who you've always been." The room was quiet, except for the ticking of the old clock on the wall. Rachel walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. Then, without turning around, she said, "Do you know what my mom told me before she died?" Tom shook his head. She said, "When the storm comes, you stand." I didn't know what she meant until you left. You were my storm, Tom. And I stood. She turned to face him, not angry now, just calm. "I don't hate you. I don't even wish you harm. But forgiveness isn't about letting people back in. It's about letting yourself move on. So, I forgive you. But we're done. Forever." Tom's lips parted, as if to speak, but he didn't. He knew there was nothing left to say. He nodded slowly. "You're a better person than I ever was." Rachel gave a small, bittersweet smile. "No, Tom. I just had a better teacher." He glanced at the framed photo of Ellen on the shelf, smiling, gentle, proud, and something in him broke again. "Take care of yourself, Rachel," he said softly. Then, he left. Rachel stood at the window, watching his figure disappear into the night rain. She whispered, "Goodbye, Tom." 2 weeks later, a letter arrived in her mailbox. No return address, just her name scrawled in uneven handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper. "Rachel, thank you for forgiving me. I've joined a volunteer program rebuilding homes in New Orleans. Maybe I can do something good before I'm gone. You showed me that money doesn't build, worth character does. I'll never forget you. Tom." Rachel read the note twice. Then she smiled faintly, folded it, and slipped it inside her mother's Bible. "Looks like he's learning, Mama," she whispered. A month passed. The Ellen Project opened its first learning center in Southeast D.C. Reporters gathered, cameras flashing, but Rachel didn't care about the coverage. She cared about the children, dozens of them sitting in their new classrooms, clutching books with bright eyes and wide smiles. Her speech that day was short, simple, and heartfelt. "This center isn't about me. It's about second chances. It's about proving that where you come from doesn't define where you're going." My mother believed in that, and so do I. The applause was thunderous. Among the crowd stood Mr. Klein, tears glinting in his eyes. "She's her mother's daughter," he murmured. And she was. If you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had to rebuild yourself from the ashes, remember Rachel. Because grace is not weakness. Forgiveness isn't surrender. It's freedom. 2 years later, Washington, D.C. had changed. But Rachel Richardson had changed even more. The Ellen Project was no longer just a foundation. It had become a nationwide movement. Schools, housing programs, medical outreach, and college scholarships under one mission, giving people the kind of chance her mother once gave her. Her name appeared on the cover of Time, Forbes, and the Washington Post. But every time someone asked about the secret to her success, her answer never changed. It's not about wealth. It's about remembering where you came from and who helped you get there. Her mother's words were engraved in gold letters at the entrance of every learning center. "When the storm comes, you stand." One bright spring morning, Rachel stood in front of a new community center in New Orleans, the latest Ellen Project site to open. Children played nearby, laughter echoing through the rebuilt neighborhood. This place was different. The air smelled like new beginnings, and Rachel felt peace. A volunteer coordinator walked up to her. "Mrs. Richardson, the man in charge of our construction team, asked if he could thank you personally. He says he's been here since day one." Rachel smiled. "Of course. What's his name?" The woman glanced at her clipboard. "Tom Green." Rachel froze. Her heart fluttered not from love or pain, but something more complex. A quiet, unexpected grace. "Send him over," she said softly. Moments later, Tom appeared, wearing a hard hat and a paint-splattered shirt. He looked older, leaner, but steadier somehow. The guilt that once haunted his eyes had softened into humility. When he saw her, he paused, like the air had left his lungs. Then, slowly, he removed his hat. "Rachel." "Tom," she said gently. "I heard you've been rebuilding homes." He nodded. For the past year, after you forgave me, I didn't know what to do with myself. So, I figured maybe I could start helping people who actually needed it." She smiled faintly. "And did it help?" His eyes glistened. "More than I can explain. I thought money was everything once. But now," he gestured around at the bright, freshly painted walls, the children laughing outside. "Now I get it. Purpose feels better than wealth ever did." Rachel's voice softened. "I'm glad you found peace, Tom." He looked down, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photo, a snapshot of the two of them years ago, smiling on a park bench. He held it up. "I keep this to remind myself what selfishness cost me. But I don't regret meeting you, Rachel. You changed my life, even after I didn't deserve it." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't look away. "I didn't change your life, Tom. You did. You just needed to see who you could be when you stopped running from who you were." He nodded, breathing shakily. "You're still the best person I ever knew." Rachel reached out, resting a gentle hand on his arm. "No, Tom. I'm just someone who learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means freeing yourself." They stood there for a moment, two people bound not by love anymore, but by understanding. Then Rachel smiled. "Take care of yourself, and keep building." He returned the smile, small, genuine, at peace. "I will." As Tom turned to walk away, Rachel watched him go, sunlight glinting off the wet pavement, and for the first time in years, she felt her heart fully heal. Weeks later, Rachel received a letter in the mail. It was from Tom's volunteer organization. "Dear Mrs. Richardson, we wanted to inform you that one of our senior project managers, Tom Green, recently used his savings to establish a small scholarship for children of construction workers. He asked us to dedicate it in memory of Ellen Richardson. He said, 'She taught me what building really means.'" Rachel sat at her desk, tears slipping quietly down her cheeks. She looked up at her mother's portrait and whispered, "You see, Mama? Even storms can build gardens." Months later, the Ellen Project Gala filled the National Museum of History, the same place where Tom had once approached her in shame. This time, Rachel stood on the same stage, stronger, radiant in her mother's pearls. "2 years ago," she began, "I thought forgiveness was weakness. I thought that letting go meant letting people win. But I was wrong. Forgiveness is strength. It's the foundation that holds us when the world tries to break us." The audience listened in reverent silence. "Tonight, we honor not just my mother's memory, but every person who has learned that loss can become purpose, and pain can become legacy. That's what the Ellen Project is about. Not wealth, not fame, just impact." She paused, emotion catching in her throat. "Because when the storm comes, we stand." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. Rachel smiled through tears, feeling her mother's presence like a warm light behind her. And somewhere across the country, in a rebuilt home with children laughing outside, Tom watched her speech on TV, smiling quietly, whispering, "She stood, just like she said she would." Sometimes the people who break you are the ones who teach you how to rebuild. And sometimes, grace, not revenge, is the legacy that lasts forever. If this story touched your heart, take a moment right now to share it forward. Because somewhere out there, someone needs a reminder that storms don't last forever, but strength does. Subscribe for more true-to-life stories that remind us of what it means to rise, forgive, and begin again.